What if the Earth rotated so fast that we could feel it? Right now, you're hurtling through space at roughly 1,000 miles per hour, spinning like a record on a cosmic turntable, and you don't feel a thing. That's because our planet has been rotating at this steady pace for billions of years, and everything around us moves in perfect synchronization. But what would happen if Earth suddenly decided to pick up the pace? Let's start with something subtle. Imagine Earth's rotation increased by just 10%. You probably wouldn't notice much at first. The day would shrink from 24 hours to about 21.5 hours. Your circadian rhythm would get confused, leaving you perpetually jet-lagged in your own time zone. Birds would struggle with their migration patterns, and farmers would curse the shorter growing seasons. But physically, you'd still feel planted firmly on the ground. But that's just the beginning. As our planet spins faster, some interesting physics come into play. The same force that makes you lean into a sharp turn while driving kicks in on a global scale. It's called centrifugal force. And while scientists will remind you it's technically a fictitious force, it feels very real when you're the one being flung around. Here's where things get fascinating. Earth already bulges at the equator because of its current rotation. Our planet isn't a perfect sphere. It's an oblate spheroid, about 26 miles wider at the equator than from pole to pole. That's like a basketball that someone sat on, very gently. But as rotation speed increases, this bulge would become more pronounced. The planet would start to look less like a ball and more like a cosmic pancake. Now, let's ramp things up. If Earth spun twice as fast, cutting our day to 12 hours, you'd finally start to feel something strange. At the equator, people would experience a noticeable reduction in their apparent weight. Not enough to float, mind you, but enough to make you feel oddly bouncy. A 150-pound person might feel like they weigh 145 pounds. Gymnasts would suddenly find themselves capable of unprecedented feats, while weightlifters would break records left and right. The weather would go absolutely haywire. Our planet's rotation drives massive air currents and ocean patterns through something called the Coriolis effect. Double the spin, and these patterns would intensify dramatically. Hurricanes would become more frequent and more powerful. The jet stream would turn into a turbocharged river of air, making commercial aviation a nightmare of turbulence and unpredictable weather patterns. But wait, we're just getting started. Let's push the envelope further. At 3 times normal rotation speed, with days lasting only 8 hours, the effects become unmistakably dramatic. People living near the equator would feel genuinely lighter, as if gravity had been dialed down by about 15%. Meanwhile, those near the poles would barely notice any change, creating a bizarre world where your weight depends on your latitude. Ocean levels would shift dramatically. Water, being fluid, would respond immediately to the increased centrifugal force. Sea levels at the equator would rise significantly, while polar regions would see their water levels drop. Coastal cities in tropical regions would find themselves underwater, while new land would emerge near the poles. The Panama Canal would become useless as water redistributed itself according to the laws of physics. And then things get even more interesting. As we approach 4 times normal rotation speed, the changes become catastrophic. The planet's shape would distort so dramatically that mountain ranges would shift and crack. Tectonic plates, already under constant stress, would buckle under the additional centrifugal forces. Earthquakes would become commonplace as the very bones of our planet adjusted to their new spinning reality. At the equator, people would feel like they weigh about 75% of their normal weight. Jumping would become an adventure as you'd hang in the air longer than expected. Walking would feel bouncy and strange, like moving in slow motion on the moon. But this wouldn't be fun for long. The constantly changing gravitational conditions would wreak havoc on human physiology. Our inner ears evolved to work with Earth's steady rotation, would struggle to maintain balance. Motion sickness would become a permanent condition for millions of people. But here's where the story takes a truly wild turn. Keep pushing that rotation speed higher, and we reach a critical threshold. At about 90 times our current rotation speed, something extraordinary happens. The centrifugal force at the equator would exactly balance Earth's gravitational pull. Picture this. People and objects at the equator would become weightless, floating freely, while still touching the ground. It would be like living in a space station, except you'd have solid ground beneath your feet and breathable air around you. This magical rotation rate would create the strangest world imaginable. Drop a ball at the equator, and it wouldn't fall. It would just hover. Jump, and you might never come down, instead orbiting the planet at ground level. Meanwhile, people living just a few hundred miles north or south would still experience near-normal gravity, creating invisible boundaries where the laws of physics seem to change. Of course, long before reaching this cosmic carnival, our planet would face existential challenges. The atmosphere itself would be reshaped by the extreme rotation. Air would pile up at the equator, creating a thick, dense band of atmosphere, while leaving the polar regions gasping in thin air. Weather systems would become so violent and unpredictable that they'd make the worst hurricanes look like gentle breezes. The redistribution of water would create entirely new geography. Massive equatorial oceans would form, while polar regions became dry land. The ice caps would melt not from heat, but from the sheer mechanical stress of the spinning planet. This water would join the Great Equatorial Bulge, creating oceans miles deeper than anything we know today. Push the rotation even faster, and we approach the ultimate limit. At roughly 100 times normal speed, the centrifugal force would overcome Earth's gravity entirely. The planet would literally tear itself apart. Chunks of rock, water, and atmosphere would fly off into space. Starting at the equator and working their way toward the poles, what began as a thought experiment about feeling Earth's rotation would end with our planet becoming a spectacular ring system around the sun. Like Saturn's rings, but made of debris from our former home. The irony is beautiful and terrifying. We began by wondering what it would feel like to sense our planet's rotation. We discovered that feeling it would be a sign that everything we know is coming apart at the seams. In the end, the fact that we can't feel Earth spinning isn't a limitation. It's a gift. It means our world is stable, predictable, and perfectly calibrated for life as we know it. Sometimes, the most extraordinary thing about our ordinary world is just how extraordinary ordinary really is.